Good afternoon. In this video, we're going to go over this week's options watch list. Before I get into the watch list, if you're not in the room, you can find the link in the description of the video and in my bio section of social media accounts. Also, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you've done so already. For this week, let's see, put the call ratio is at 0.52%, or I should say 0.52. It's low, not extremely low. So we'll have to see if that has any effect this week. Looking at the economic calendar for the week, we have a full week this week. Hopefully we'll have a lot more action this week. The last couple of weeks we've just had a lot of short weeks, and the market just going up on a lot of bad news and bad economic data and stuff like that, just ignoring what's going on in the world. But as far as the economic calendar, Monday, I don't really see anything. We got Barr speaking at 10 a.m. Tuesday, don't really see anything Tuesday. Wednesday, we have CPI, so maybe we'll get some action out of that. We have the 10-year auction at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, and we have the beige book at 2. Normally don't pay attention to that stuff, but they've been movers in the past, so that might be good to keep an eye on that. Thursday, we have PPI and unemployment claims, so that could be a morning mover. And we have Friday, we have consumer sentiment at 10 a.m. So we get some important inflation numbers coming out this week. So hopefully that will get the market moving. But, just the way it's been lately, the market makes its move and just ignores it when the market opens. It makes its move pre-market, and by the time the market opens, it's already forgotten it, and it's already ripping already. So if it's assuming it's bad, so just the way it's been lately. Now VIX right here, we had a pop on VIX, even though SPY really didn't drop much, but VIX took off. Now we get VIX in the 14s. It's kind of like in the middle of the zone. It could really go either way here. We have earnings coming up the next few weeks, so we may see some earnings run-ups. We may see some surprises this week. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what to expect this week. All I know is that VIX is right in the middle of the range. It's had its little pop-up from the under 13, so SPY could just keep ripping or could keep dumping, but VIX does have some gaps to fill. Did it fill this gap? Yeah, barely. And some gaps down here under 14 and right around 1350, so we'll have to see if VIX does that. But VIX also has plenty of room to run to 25. Just hasn't been really anything that brings down SPY. I mean, this is what VIX popped on right here the last 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, and really didn't drop that much. I mean, it went from 444 to 330. I only dropped $6, and VIX didn't really go anywhere. I just want to point out we were. Let's switch this over. I'll put this, unlink this. We'll go to VIX right here. Now this day is what, 6:15, which is right here. No, 6:15. 6:15. Yeah, right here. VIX was at 14, and it went from right to 626. 626, it's down here. Oh, yeah, see, this is where it was. Right here is where, the point I'm trying to make is, this is the 444, VIX was right here, and SPY dumped from, what, almost $16, and it popped a little bit, then it dropped. Now we have VIX right around 13 when it was right over here, and it popped a lot more, and it barely dropped on SPY. Barely dropped. It dropped like half of what it did right here. But yeah, it popped twice as much, which is kind of crazy if you look at it, that it did do that. So, I mean, lately when VIX gaps up and VIX makes a pop and SPY barely moves, that's more room for it to run. So we'll have to see if that actually happens. And one of the things that I've been looking at lately is because VIX has been gapping up. I'll bring it VIX back up, SPY, because I want to point this out. Anytime VIX gaps up, it usually sells off. Like it gapped up, then it sold off, gapped up, sold off, gapped up, sold off, gapped up, sold off, gapped up, it stayed elevated, then it sold off, gapped up, sold off, gapped up, sold off a little bit, gapped up, sold off just a little bit. It gapped up and took off. Then it sold off like mid-morning, or yeah, mid-morning. So that's been the theme for the last couple of weeks, is that when VIX gaps up, SPY ends up running and VIX ends up closing the gap. But sometimes VIX can drop and SPY can just stay sideways. So just something to keep an eye on, just something I want to point out, that when VIX does gap up, I'm actually looking at calls when that happens, because SPY didn't really drop much and VIX popped so much. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to, I thought we were going to have a massive pullback, but we've had so much economic numbers and we had FOMC and just nothing seems to be phasing SPY. So I mean, if it does drop, I mean, it might try to hold this 431 area and try to take off. I mean, we got earnings coming up. It's got a couple weeks. I mean, SPY could just drop right here to 430, 431, then just make a run for 450 to 460 before actually doing anything with earnings, assuming if earnings is bad, which I'm going to think it's going to be. But so we will be watching SPY over the 4. We got the 442 high is way up here, but let's see, we'll say 440 for a push to 442, 444. And it gets over this 444 area, I think we're going to have a strong push to 450. Now, if it does end up dropping more, we get some gaps to fill down here at the 425 area, and then stuff like that. So, but I would watch it underneath 437. If it does break below that, we're probably going to end up seeing 435, 432, 430. And then you get 425, 420, 415, and the 410 area. So right now, SPY, flip a coin right about now. The thing that makes me hesitant that we might bounce more, one, the 20 EMA is right there. VIX pops so much, I think that we could possibly try to push a little more. We'll have to see if that happens or not. That's why you need to be in the room. We're going to take it day by day and see how VIX acts overnight and where it's at, and make our decision pre-market based on the overnight action. So definitely keep an eye on that. Apple is one that I'm very, very skeptical about. It did reject the trend line right here, and it did pull back, and you can see it banged its head at it a couple times and rejected it. Earnings is coming up, so in the weekly RSI is well over 70. The one thing I don't like is if Apple is making more all-time highs going into earnings, I think the earnings is going to end up being bad. It's going to end up dumping. But Apple is just very notorious for lowering its EPS and lowering its guidance and still managing to beat. But anytime it does this, the earnings is way down here. Where was earnings? Right here, right there. Earnings was right there, and it dumped right there. So whenever earnings was right in here, I think. So this was earnings when it was up by all-time high. It kind of dumped right there. I'm just guessing by. So most of the time we've had earnings, it's either at the it's had a significant pullback before earnings, it ends up going, or if it's at all-time highs and it has earnings, it ends up pulling back. I think if it stays near all-time highs or makes more all-time highs, it should. I shouldn't say should. It could pull back on bad earnings. We'll have to see. I don't have high expectation for Apple earnings, so that's what I'm thinking on Apple. We'll have to see what happens. So if you want to like watch it under 189 or over 192.50. If it gets over 192.50, I mean, we could see it push to 195. Then, I mean, if you're at 195, you might as well go straight to 200 at this point. So we'll have to see. I think that if it continues making all-time highs, we're going to see a dump on earnings. So something to keep an eye on. BA still in its channel. It's just, it does not want to get out of this channel, even though it's starting to look like it's riding the 20 EMA up. It's like bouncing. Blow it up a little more. Gets underneath it, bounces. Gets underneath it, bounces. So, and it's rising. So, I mean, it gets over this 215, push to 220, gets over this 220 area. We may actually see a significant push on this bump. Boeing has earnings coming up, which is what, 7/26. So it's a couple of weeks away. So maybe it has an earnings run up. I mean, I don't really pay too much attention to BA's earnings run up. Yeah, see, it kind of dropped right there. It wasn't too much right there. So right there, it dropped a little. We'll have to see. Boeing's earnings, even though they're kind of improving, the minus is getting smaller, -6, -1, 127. So it is getting better if you go based on those numbers. So maybe it does have a run up on BA. We'll have to see. Keep an eye on that. I mean, if it does manage not to break out, gets underneath 210, they're probably going to revisit that 200 level again. But right here, it's literally a flip between 220 and 200. Eventually, it's going to break out. We've been watching this every single week, and it just does not seem to want to get out of this area. So just have to keep an eye on that. Microsoft is it's banging its head against this 340 level, rejected here, rejected here, rejected here, and it's making it like an ascending wedge right here. You see it's making higher lows and it's flattening out at 340. So if the market is strong and does something crazy this week, or Apple does something crazy, Microsoft could take off and make a push to 350 again, even 360. But if it gets underneath this 335 area, I'd watch it underneath 335 to 330, and then you get 325 to 320 on Microsoft. So a lot of the stocks we're going to watch are literally flip a coin. It's all going to determine on the news, the market, and how it reacts and stuff like that. NVDA, still waiting for this thing to come down and pull kind of a move, but it's just not. It's still staying elevated. Even though SPY had a big red day, NVIDIA, not really fazed by it whatsoever. So if it gets underneath this, I mean, 400 is so far away. If it gets underneath this 415 level, yeah, 415, watch it push to 410, 400. 400 would be a big psychological number. It gets below 400, and then you get the 390, 380. Then you get the middle Keltner channel way down here at the 330 area. Plus even the top of the Keltner channel is at 385. So it's got room to pull back. The question is it and when is it going to? Meta. Who knows what's going to happen with this thing? I mean, this thing is right at 300. It's got this thing with the threads. I think that thing's stupid, copying Twitter. I mean, Facebook is like Google. They have no innovation whatsoever. They just copy everything that's popular. And that's just their structure, I guess, and the structure, just the way they do things. I mean, Google, they copied Yahoo, they copied Ask Jeeves, they copied Overture, they copied PayPal. I mean, every single thing that they have built, Google has been a carbon copy of. And Meta is doing the same thing. Still outside the Keltner channel for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And you would think that it would pull back. It did kind of like reject right around this, 298 level. I would not be looking at calls. I mean, look at the RSI is well over 75, and it's just, even though it's been like at 75 right here, it's still rising. It's just too much risk. And as this is rising, I mean, look at this, from Look at the histogram. It's been going down since right here, since the end of January, and it's went from what, 200 to 300, and RSI is rising, but histogram is going down. There's a huge bearish divergence going on the weekly and daily. You can see it right here, the RSI. I would not be looking at calls on Meta whatsoever. I'd be looking at the short side. I think this will play out. It's just a matter of when. Problem with divergences, they can last for days, weeks, even months. I mean, back when Baidu and Roku had a bearish divergence going on, it took like a couple months for it to play out. So this has been, what, 6 months plus right here. Eventually it's going to play out. The question is, when is it going to play out? Maybe earnings will be what starts it. I mean, this is where it broke down. It's pretty much back tested with the breakdown level right here. So we may actually, now that it's retested that area, it might actually pull back this time. So definitely watch it underneath the we'll say 385, push to 280, 275, 270, basically every $5, 265. It's got room down to 250 if it does manage to pull back. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on Meta. Netflix, whenever you think about earnings run up, that's the first thing I always think of is Netflix. It's got all these lines up here from back years ago where it's just major weekly resistance and support. It didn't really get back up to this 480 level, so I would not be surprised if we get a little more of a push on Netflix. I know that we have a bearish divergence going on right here, and we're well over 70 right here, but Netflix is just one of those things where it just ignores everything, and it can push to 480 before actually coming back down for earnings. But who knows, maybe earnings will be good, but for Netflix, I don't know. But earnings is always a crapshoot for me. You just never really know what's going to end up happening. So yeah, Netflix is just very notorious for earnings run-ups. It hasn't really had a big earnings run-up in a long time. I mean, we used to get some really massive earning run-ups, but we just haven't had it. Yeah, see, the last couple of earnings, big dump. Got a little bit of a pop there. A little bit of pop. Not much here. So we'll have to see if this time it actually does get a run-up. So it's probably going to be kind of a wild week as far as what to expect. Just got to keep an open mind, long and short this week, as anything can happen. I don't think we'll see anything major happen until we get the inflation numbers. We could end up just chopping until we get inflation numbers. It's just the way it's been lately. It's just the market's waiting for something to happen. Whether it's the inflation numbers, whether it's other economic data, or if it's other world events to happen, or something trivial, or earnings, just the market's waiting and taking time off the clock. So we'll have to see what triggers the next big move. What will it be? And rate it. It's be pretty much anyone's guess at this point. So that's gonna do it for the watch list. I know that's been kind of boring the last couple of weeks, but hopefully this week will be better. So that's going to do it. Thanks for watching.